I'm just gonna cut that out. But hey, good morning, everyone. So I'm with Thomas Muat this morning, and yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about his journey today because he originally came to me to work on his coding, and it's naturally developed into talking about like the business of coding, also freelancing, a bit of that. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. We worked together for quite a while. So firstly, thanks so much for taking the time to chat about your journey today.
Thank you very much for having me, I guess.
Yeah, so I think obviously a good point to kick off on is just to tell people a little bit about, well, firstly, what you're doing now, just in the coding space and with your dev work and things like that. And also you can go into a bit of your journey of just where you were before we started working together, because obviously it's been quite a long journey.
Yeah, so currently I'm working as a quality assurance specialist with a software company based in the US. Still sticking to a lot of the codings. So myself and Gavin were talking just before this. I'm coding predominantly at the moment in Ruby and Swift, writing software tests. I'm very lucky the company I work for buy heavily into quality assurance. So we work closely alongside our devs. And they don't really see a massive split between us and the dev. We both write code. If I need to jump in and change some accessibility and icons, etc., they're happy for me to do it. So that's where I am currently. But it's been a kind of roller coaster of, I guess, about 2.5 years. So 2.5 years ago, I had zero experience with coding. Hadn't done any of it, and I was looking with the pandemic, and I guess like most people, reassessing life and what I wanted to do to career change. So I undertook a diploma in web development, which can only take you so far. It was absolutely great for the fundamentals, learning the very basics of like HTML, CSS, and moving on to like Flask, and then finally Django. But it could only teach you. I'm trying to think of the word. It only taught you what they were like. It was like a lot of it was pre-recorded sessions, so there wasn't a lot of that interaction. So after that, I was taking on different projects as like trying to learn and earn, I guess, at the same time. And I undertook a project that, while I probably might have been able to stumble my way through, I got to the point of thinking like, I need to start looking at this from a business side of things, from a wider perspective, rather than just like the function of the class I'm working on, but how does that fit into the greater architecture of what I'm trying to build in the long term? And that's where I turned to you, Gavin, because I wanted not only, I've hit this specific problem, but to explore some of like the wider philosophies around like coding and building, not just small functions, but the actual a fully fledged stats driven website that is used in a company. And it was that sort of thing that I came to you about, is to start exploring different usage, all different things. Like our sessions covered a number of things. We had a very loose guide of what we wanted to cover, but week by week, we kind of like, we'd end up maybe starting off with one thing and we'd delve into another topic and we'd explore it together, like you leading me along the way and just really increasing my learning and like the scope of my, like the knowledge that I knew.
Yeah, because if I remember, you obviously made a career change into the web dev stuff and things like that, but you did have a background in, you're working in like stats and a lot of analytics and things like that, right? So you did have a very logical, quite technical background.
Yeah, exactly. I was working as a performance analyst, so yeah, there was that side of things there. Like to the, I guess I think other people have come into it this way. I started off with the very, very basics of writing macros in Excel, like VBA, and like it started from there. Then I like, in the stats driven world of sports, there is so much like Python, R. There's all this like, people are like, it's like really creeping into the industry as being better for that side of it. Yeah. So I had like dabbled in it, but hadn't really grasped it, barring looking at Stack Overflow for how do I change this number to this number sort of thing. So yeah. I did come into it with a logical background, but it wasn't from what's required to like create websites, create apps, that side of things.
Yeah, no, definitely. It at least gives you kind of from what I've seen with other friends in like data science and things like that, at least gives you a framework and way to think about um, things in like structures and logic and things like that. And that's obviously translates super well into the coding side of things. But one thing also that really jumped out to me when we first met and first started together is that you really had this like hustle. Like you said, you really had a couple of projects even before we started working together. Like, how did you actually go about getting those projects? I think a lot of people would enjoy to hear that.
Some of them were word of mouth.
Mm.
And I think that it's not a great one to say, but I guess in this day and age as well, like sometimes that like something comes to you and you just got to run with it. So one of them, I currently have 2 e-commerce stores, a website for a sports club that I'm close to, and I've got a lot bigger project which I'll probably touch on because that's where most of our work focused. But a lot of the stuff came out of getting my name out there, and I was willing to do work for cheaper as I was in that learning process and building a portfolio. So people approached and said, "Can you build a e-commerce store?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then as soon as I built one, then a lot of it was then the next one would come along. "Oh, can you build an e-commerce store?" Yeah, I've already got a lot of code that I can reuse that like can be ported across. And then again, I wanted to expand and look at not an e-commerce store. So I then did a sports website for free because I wanted to, and I used it to try. I think you were there actually when I was doing it. I was trying to like look at how I can build a custom CMS system. So like playing around, learning if it was like instead of just porting one in, just trying to find out and learn my way through it, like benefits, like negatives, all that sort of stuff. And then the main one obviously came through like family connections, which is great, which was like the main project that, to be fair, I still dabble in it today. I've completely rewritten the site once already now, so we're on to like version 2, which is a complete rewrite, complete new repo. Everything was moved across, but that one there has been like my main one. It's for a company that have about 40 people in it, and it's their main like intranet is what they call it. So it's their internal like stats where they log everything they're doing and they run payroll off it and all these different things through it. So hopefully I got my numbers right.
No, but that was so that really I remember a voice kept in mind in that you from the get-go you were getting these projects just by solving people's problems. You were like, yeah, I can try solve that, and you like were excited to do it. Like that's a big part, is just being excited to build these solutions and things. I mean, and also when you said you got a lot of these initial projects from your kind of close networks, friends, family, did you, when you kind of decided to make this jump into web dev and building out projects and stuff, did you tell people, did you say like, hey, this is what I'm doing now, I'm building websites, if you know anyone who needs a website or anyone who has maybe a tech problem, like how did you go about that side of it?
Yeah, exactly that. I reached out to people. I think I've got built out. I'd build out a lot of stuff just like for enjoyment. So whether it was I enjoy cooking barbecue, so I just knocked together a really easy site about like barbecue recipes. More just because I was playing with different techniques, different things I wanted to have a look at, but to constantly just build that portfolio. So then I was reaching out to people and like showing them my work, and I was like posting it on LinkedIn and like trying to really like drive that side of things. And then whenever people came to me, like we talked about it, and you were very much trying to push me one way, but I was undercutting myself in terms of money wise because being the realist, I knew I needed to build that portfolio. So I'd undercut myself knowing that like it's not a short-term goal, it's a long-term goal. So short-term pain, long-term gain was the kind of like outlook I looked at, and was just like getting myself out there. And I'm a social person, so like anytime people are like, "Oh, I'd love a website for that," and I'm like, people will be like, now are like, "Oh, I know someone who could do it for you. Have you talked to Tom?" And it's really grown now to like, it's like 3 or 4 connections down the line now that like my name's getting banded about. So it really helps for that side of things.
Yeah, no, that was epic. I also remember quite a few times we spoke about like the referral aspect as well, as like leverage the current projects and say like, hey, do you know anyone else who might need X or Y type of thing? Like, it's obviously, if you're getting referred, you're obviously doing an awesome job. But I've always found that's really beneficial, and just also saying to people, it's like, hey, I mean, this has been a lot of fun. After you show them the first like revision or whatever, and just being like, hey, I mean, do you know anyone else by the chance off the top of your head who might need something like this? And just kind of gets it like the seeds planted in people's minds for down the line almost.
Oh, that's exactly it. Like when you're going into like, we took on projects for specific people, knowing the industry that they were working in, thinking that if you get that in there, you suddenly get your name's the one that when they're having coffee, they're chatting about this, like your name's the one that's getting thrown around there. And I have had two or three like things come through the pipeline from doing that, from taking that cheap one or like that, like cutting my profit down in the initial, but understanding that I'm buying into the fact that I know the kind of group they're in, and there's going to be other people that want these sort of sites. So my profit's going to be long term, and explaining to people, saying like, I'm as a favor, I'm doing this for you, but this price isn't going to be what's going forward. I'll do it for you for this price. Refer me, get my name out there. Like, but and like getting that, for one, it makes them feel a bit special, and they're happy to put you around because you've got this like special deal with them. But it got my name into circles that it would have been a lot harder to get into originally.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant frame in my opinion, of specific, not just being like, yeah, my price is, I don't know, whatever X, that's like less than normally is, but like specifically saying like my normal price is this, but I'm going to do it for you at this because of these reasons. And obviously I'd like for you to intro me to a few more people. It's like explicitly setting what the expectations are, not just like, yeah, this is my price. I'm like, well, that's cheap. I'm going to tell everyone you can do it for super cheap. But then you're like, okay, damn, now I'm stuck in that super low tier.
It was also being confident enough then, like when some of the future work came in from those circles, of being like, I'm sorry, no, like this is my price now. Like I'm not going to then undercut myself going forward. I found my worth, I found my value, and then people would come in, and while your name did get banded around, it was having the confidence to tell us that like, no, I know the value of my coding worth and what I can produce. So I did end up saying no to a few projects, but then the projects that people were happy for me to take on were really impressed with them. So it was as well like understanding that like that wasn't going to be where I was going forward. I wasn't just going to keep accepting any price, but I actually going forward then started to deliver value, and the people that did want me took me on. People that thought it like didn't have the money for it, then unfortunately there's other sides. If they want to go make something, go, there's like Wix, you can go for free, but there's a real value in building custom sites.
Yeah, especially when you can really tailor it to what their needs are. I remember you with the it was the rugby website, the one e-commerce store. It was like you integrate the payments portal and all that type of stuff. It's like you could really make it exactly how you wanted it to be for the client.
Exactly. Like some of the people that I was working with, that one exactly was a very specific product. So then, for instance, it was an e-commerce store with one product on it. So like how we ended up like working through it and like building it for expansion so that it could be built, like he said, I might bring more products in, so building it so it could be expanded and all these little bits in there. But yeah, there is a real value in the custom side of things. If you've got a very specific thing you want to pay for, and if you want it to look different, because I think we all probably know, like you can spot a Shopify or a Wix website a mile away.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think people can tell already just from how you were getting projects even before working together, and you got those quickly. I remember, I think it was we worked together 6 months or so plus into when you started to like make that shift, and you already had projects. A lot of people go a year, 2 years without getting projects, or they're like, oh, I'm not good enough yet type of thing. But you've obviously got this hustle, so I think people will pick up on that. So for you, was when you came to me, it sounds like the most important thing was you were doing it all on your own. Like you were already building great projects, but you weren't sure if you were following best practices. You didn't really have anyone to properly bounce ideas off, work through problems together with. You had Stack Overflow and forums and stuff, but it's not quite the same as that one-on-one. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. My use of dry code wasn't very good, and I was like naming principles and all this thing. Like it worked when you press the button on the website, but
Yeah.
was I future proofing myself, and was I following best practice? Was what I was doing now going to hinder me in a year's time when I'm trying to make a change at the website? So like I could do the basics, but I needed that help and that learning around, as we said, like some of that wider stuff and all those different aspects.
I mean, and had you looked into any potential mentors or like one-on-one services, or yeah, had you kind of looked into anything that might give you extra support?
There was, I can't remember the name now. There's a website that they do a variety of, be it a 30-second call, or no, a 30-minute call to help with a specific problem
30
to,
seconds.
if they could answer that quickly, it'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
That's an idea. A 30-minute call to like mentoring, but it just didn't seem to have that personal touch for me. And then I ended up like reading through some of your articles, and that's when I got in contact. And then instead of like on there, like it wasn't even like an intro call that I could have. It was like they wrote a profile and I basically just say like, I'd like you to mentor me. Here's a few $100. Like, and I just didn't feel that connection, and I had no idea if they were going to be good as a mentor, because like it's not just answer a specific question. You don't have to get on with someone to answer a specific question, but like when you're spending like, I think our first course was like 12 hours long, like out of like weekly calls, like it's a lot of time we're spending together, and you're delving into a lot of things, and it's across, I think it was across, the first time was across 6 weeks. So you are spending a lot of time together, and life moves like you. So like in my opinion, I needed a connection with someone. So we had a great intro call. You talked about the problems, you presented like what you felt you could offer, what you couldn't. So like really clear with me about like, you're not going to sit and actually code something for me, but like we can learn problems, like we'll help solve things together. So like as soon as I had that intro call, I was like, yeah, like this is something that I would like. I think it will be beneficial for myself as a person, for the work I'm trying to achieve. And that's why I kind of like ended up going with yourself.
No, I appreciate that. I remember also it was the first like maybe 2-3 sessions, even we had already got through the stuff of like, let's review how you structure your projects, let's review your code. That's very technical. That's very just like, okay, cool, here's some better conventions, you can improve on these things. Are you still following those things? So you get those done quite quickly. But I remember we moved into quite a lot of just like, hey, talk about ideas, how could we kind of expand things out, what other directions could be done, and things like that. It became not more businessy, but almost like around the ecosystem, not just the technical stuff alone of coding.
Yeah, I'd come to you and say like, we were fleshing out at the time. I was fleshing out a product that was, so at the time it wasn't currently being used. It was a completely brand new product for this, like it was the main site, so the stat site that the company used. It's completely fleshed out, and we were saying like, well, I know, having chatted about the future and where we want to go, this is the sort of numbers and stats, or the way they want to work. Like, let's talk about like ideas about how like we could best implement that, and but like not from a, oh, you can write this function here, but like talking through flows, through like user workflows, all of those sort of like broader things. And like we just had some really great discussions of like bouncing ideas off each other, saying like, and then I'd come back to you at like the end of the week, the next session, and be like, this is where I've got to. And you were like, because you talked about that, have you thought about this? And it was just this constant like bouncing, and like ideas were growing, and I'd go into a session with one idea and come out with like 6 more, but in a different direction that were better. And it was that really nice like ideation sessions, which were like brilliant, and like looking at like how that can future proof me. And if you go down that route, it might not be best practice, or there might be a concern there. And we just had some really great discussions about the project and like businesses, which like have held true for some of the projects I've gone on to in the future, about thinking about some of our discussions and the topics we've had. It wasn't that project based. It was really good stuff that I could take forward.
No, the interesting thing is, like a lot of these things, I picked those up from working in a company with other developers. So like you'll come in as a newbie developer or something, and then you have someone sitting right next to you who's got 5 years of experience. And then you get that with the code reviews, you get that with just throwing out ideas like, hey, I've got this problem, can you help me work through it? So it's like that kind of naturally happens in companies with teams. But a lot of people who are freelance devs, or they're maybe earlier on in the journey, they just haven't had that opportunity, and they might not have that opportunity because they don't want to go into a company or something like that. So it's yeah, it's definitely something I grew a lot from. So it's cool to be able to give it to other people.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's like the way of the world. I look through Twitter and see these 100 days of code, these free boot camps and stuff. And like, while they're great, like there is definitely a massive value in mentorship from yourself, or as you said, if you join companies, you get a mentor and that learning side of things.
No, 100%. Yeah, often in that first year of companies, or first couple of months, you get like a literal, like a proper mentor who's like a code buddy type of thing. Like they show you around, get you acclimated, all those type of things. But did
You
you
even get code. You get code review, don't you? Like that's I think one of the
and code
biggest things.
reviews?
Like
Yeah.
you have to put PRs up and get code review, and like that simple thing of having other people review your code and discuss, like you said, like is so beneficial. And that's what like we got to a point. So I'd bring up little bits of code, and we'd kind of look at that, and then we'd go to other topics. Like our sessions weren't just full learning; they were very much you tailored them to what I needed that week.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is also an important question to ask is, I mean, even after or just before we started, like, did you have any concerns about working with someone? Like, were you the things you were maybe worried about a little bit?
Well, I think it is like rightly, oh, probably rightly or wrongly, like you're putting up with you put up a lot of money because like I talked about it as investing in myself. So like there's a nervousness of like, am I fully going to get the value out of it? Will it answer the questions? There is a slight unknown element to it, I guess, which there's an unknown element to a lot of things in the world.
Yeah.
I read up a lot of that you had like reviews from previous people you were mentoring, reading some of the articles and stuff you'd written gave me the confidence that this guy knows his stuff, and having our intro call, like it kind of settled my nerves a bit.
Yeah. No, like you said, also we did 2 calls each week. I remember for the first 6 weeks. Yeah. And Steffi, you spend a lot of time with someone. Like you got to have good rapport, you got to feel comfortable, understood, all those type of things.
Oh, exactly that. So but yeah, as I said, within the first like call, it just like completely settled, and I was like, actually, like something this is like going to be beneficial for me, and it was, and we ended up actually going on to a lot more than just those 6 weeks.
Yeah, I remember we essentially just continued. We just like did a whole another batch just to keep doing what we were doing. It was a lot of fun.
I think we went weekly, and then we went to bi-weekly. Like, but it continued over a huge number of months.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. It was awesome to see you just continue to build more projects and more projects. Like that's what I was saying. I think a lot of people recognize you also have an awesome hustle. So if they want to reach out to someone who's a kick-ass developer, they definitely know who to speak to. I mean, do you have any kind of last thoughts just as we start wrapping up? It's like if someone was thinking about kind of getting some mentorship or help, like where do you think they kind of need to be before starting to work with someone, whether it's me or someone else?
To be fair, I don't know if you need to be anywhere. Like you could be a fantastic coder and still need mentorship. Like I've grown hugely now. Like even in my current company, like there's some of like our lead engineers, like still happy to ask for help. Like I think you've got to be willing to ask for help. You've got to have an inquisitive mind and be willing to, like, I guess this is just coding in general, but very much so with your mentorship. Like be willing to look at new ideas, new perspectives, that sort of things. But I think definitely from like your help, it can be down to the code level or up to really great like philosophies and architecture sort of decisions and delving in and not just sitting there. You're not a teacher, you're a mentor. Like we never had a session where you would talk to me for a whole hour, and that was hugely beneficial. Like open to answering questions, and I think you just got to go into it with an open mind. But I think it's a hugely beneficial experience from the newest of coders through to someone who's quite experienced in code. Like there's always things to learn, not just the code side, but about business, about automation, about deployment, like pipelines, like all of that sort of thing we actually covered. And it was like hugely beneficial from me deploying with DigitalOcean, which I was using Heroku, and we
Mm.
spent time looking at like that. Like it wasn't just how do I write a function. We covered so much, and I had the time to ask questions, and we'd just go through stuff together. So yeah, I think people just need to go into it with an open mind, but I just see there's massive value in it from kind of wherever you're at, really.
Yeah, no, I actually remember that's cool that you brought up the DigitalOcean thing. I remember because you were like, how do you actually deploy how do you deploy kind of like from bare bones type of stuff? And I was like, cool, I'll just basically show you what Heroku and all these services are doing in the background. We like spun up a machine and we could like connected to it, set up a quick API. It was, yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, obviously just like to thank you again for the time. And what's like the best way for people to reach out to you, or if they want to check the projects that you're building, because you have been building some really cool stuff, but what's the best way for people to contact you?
So if you probably LinkedIn's probably the best way, which is just Thomas with a H, and then it's Muat, Muat. And if you bear me 1 second, I'm pretty sure my GitHub is exactly the same, but I think, yeah, my GitHub will be Thomas Muir, I believe. So if I try and keep, I think even some of my bigger projects, I try and keep about 90% visible to everyone. I don't hide many things away.
Yeah.
So my GitHub repos are up there as well. If people want to have a look, or I'm also on Twitter. Like I'm very easy. It's always generally just Thomas Muir. So
yeah,
any of the social media sort of stuff, I'm all around that.
Yeah, we'll definitely add the links to the bottom. So if anyone wants even a project built or also just to riff on ideas with you, they can definitely reach out.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks very much, man.